Inclusive teaching, supporting all students in the college classroom. Establishing community guidelines.
Classroom discussion is one area where instructors and students alike often struggle to identify and establish clear guidelines. Running a class discussion or seminar-style class can be challenging. In addition to getting students to participate, instructors often deal with challenges such as students treating each other in disrespectful or tokenizing ways, managing discussions when the topic is controversial or sensitive, and making sure a wide range of diverse students feel they can participate actively in discussion. One technique that we often recommend to instructors is to establish community or discussion guidelines at the beginning of the semester.
Building an inclusive course climate starts from the very first day, and actually even from the planning stages in our course. And so one excellent thing to do on the first day is to establish ground rules for interaction in the classroom. This is another place where I like to go back to my mantra that inclusive teaching is excellent teaching, because actually the idea about ground rules comes from the learning sciences, and it's just a great idea all around to set rules for everybody to interact with in a respectful way. We could hand out a set of rules on the very first day, and that works. But something that works even better is when we can involve our students in creating the set of rules that they wish to abide by and be accountable to. And so I actually spent the first day of my statistics of sexual orientation class asking students to recall past interactions where they felt they were very productive, and think about why they were productive. And also think about situations where the discussion derailed, wasn't productive, some people felt shut out of communication, and think about why that happened. And with that knowledge, come up with rules. Now, they usually come up with a set of rules that sort of overlaps from semester to semester. It's always the same thing. So I could be more efficient and just give them the same set of rules. But the fact that they created their own rules means that they have more ownership in the process. It does not guarantee that there will never be hot moments in the classroom, but it's much easier for the instructor to go back and say, hey, let's take a step back. This is not how we said we wanted to interact with each other. And so that's part of the strategies to use in the moment where some kind of conflict happens, or where we feel that students have retreated into either silence or violence. And also, nobody's perfect. And so we will have moments that we know we haven't handled perfectly. And we go home and we think, oh, I should have said this, I should have done that. It is always okay to go back the next day and say, I want to revisit what happened yesterday. This is not how I wish it had gone, and this is what I wanted to revisit today. So that's another great strategy to bring things back to normal.
So some advice I would offer to faculty who are encountering student resistance as they're attempting to create inclusive and socially just learning environments. I often say to faculty, if you are trying to respond in the moment, it's a little too late. So the best strategy is to really prepare far in advance to engaging students in the classroom, to be very intentional about the range of pedagogical decisions you're going to make, and have that really be centered on your goal for the learning environment. So, for example, really interrogating your syllabus prior to the beginning of class, making sure that your values, your expectations around creating an inclusive and socially just learning environment is communicated on the syllabus, giving students an opportunity to hear up front why this is important to you and how it contributes to their overall learning. So doing the pre-work, setting up ground rules would be another, again, example of some of the strategies you can do in advance of having students experience the learning environment. And then when you encounter resistance in the moment, you have these resources to return to. Remember, this was some of the expectations that we agreed upon as a class. Remember, When we went through the syllabus, I talked about the importance of collaboration and cooperation as opposed to competition. Remember when we went through the syllabus, I talked about why we were doing these types of assignments. They all are things that we talked about previously, so you have that to fall back on. When you encounter resistance in ways that can potentially disrupt the learning environment, I always find it helpful to have a set of tools in your toolkit that work for you. I can tell you what I do, and it works for me. I'm always thinking about how I can help students, the class, do some of the work to interrupt what's happening. So for example, someone is sharing a particular perspective that I think is either challenging particular students in a classroom or challenging our commitment to having an inclusive or socially just learning environment. I will ask students to not talk about the behavior itself, but talk about how they're understanding what's happening in the moment. What kinds of feelings is it generating for them in that particular moment? Ask students to take a particular perspective and say how it might be communicated in a different manner that doesn't violate some of the rules that we have for the learning environment. So helping students to do some of the processing as a community. If it's a real serious challenge or a form of resistance, I'm often known to give students a break and to say, let's pause, let's reflect on this in writing to ourselves. It gives me a moment to sort of capture my own thoughts and feelings and to create some time to really think through how I want to respond to a particular issue. Sometimes you miss things. I always encourage folks to, as they're reflecting on how the last class went, if there's something that came up that you feel like you missed, to really use the next class as an opportunity to go back and address it. Sometimes when we let things go and we think, I hope it'll pass, it really doesn't, and so students can appreciate you returning to it. I always try to collect feedback at the end of class, and that also allows me to be aware potentially if I miss something that happened in the form of a resistance or disruption.
In addition to returning to community or discussion guidelines when moments get heated in class, we often recommend that instructors return to them frequently throughout the semester. This reinforces the importance of the guidelines to students, but it can also give instructors and students the opportunity to revise or expand upon the guidelines. We use this technique in our workshops on inclusive teaching, and many instructors who use this technique have had great success with it.